Welcome to the Navigating the Noise podcast. First-hand stories and winning ideas from marketing department leaders. And now, here's your host, Jerry Allocca.
Hi there, and welcome to the Navigating the Noise podcast, brought to you by Connected Culture, a digital marketing agency obsessed with conversions. I'm your host, Jerry Allocca, and this is the only podcast to put the spotlight on the unsung heroes of the marketing department as we navigate the noise of modern marketing. Joining me today is Virginia Lestingi, the Director of Marketing for Empire Valuation Consultants, where she develops and oversees all marketing and communications efforts for the firm. Virginia has over 25 years' experience in the financial services industry. And prior to joining Empire, she served as marketing director for accounting firms and ran her own business as a corporate event planner. Virginia, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jerry. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So tell us about Empire and what are valuation consultants?
Sure. So Empire is a full-service independent valuation company. We work with companies and individuals to provide value on assets for things like estate planning, perhaps hedge funds, private equity positions, to litigation support around matrimonial services and or business divorce. So essentially, we like to say if it has a balance sheet, we can value it.
On this show, we define marketing noise as anything that interferes with getting your message to your market. Virginia, what's the noise in your marketing?
Well, I think with our marketing in the professional services arena, it's difficult sometimes to get buy-in from executives on certain initiatives. It's not easy to tie a specific result to an initiative. So when you approach your superiors with something, it's really difficult to prove the ROI ahead of time. So in marketing, we could say we won this piece of business because of attending this event, but that's always after the fact, right? So what we try and do is research, and make sure that when we're coming to a meeting and pitching an initiative, that we have all of the findings behind us. A lot of times the superiors we're working with are very analytical. So they respond to facts and research. And a lot of times what I like to do is look out into the field. What are my competitors doing? And even have a discussion with them. Sometimes somebody will be really willing to sit with you and say, hey, yes, I did that as well. And this is the result that it yielded. So that's what I say to the challenge of navigating that noise, to get buy-in from executives, do your research, and come prepared.
You mentioned researching and competitors. I have you're familiar with the SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. And I take that and I add a column to that, and I add remarkable difference. When I'm looking at competitors for a client, I always want to know what is truly remarkable and different about this particular company as opposed to all the others. Right.
I agree completely. And I love that category that you added to that. And I get that question as well. There are a lot of valuation services providers out there. I think where we set ourselves apart is that coupled with our talent that we have, all of our professionals are extremely talented and well-versed and have extensive backgrounds. But we really work with our clients in depth. We want to hear from them exactly what their needs are. So we have a discussion, we have a dialogue with our clients. We get into the trenches with them. And, I think they really understand that as an extra added value to our service. It's truly just becomes a partnership. Coupled with that, I think also we have really competitive fees, which helps. So you're getting with Empire's superior product, and you're not going to break the bank doing it. So I think that's something that really sets us apart.
Business valuation marketing, that's a type of professional services marketing. So how is that kind of marketing different from other types of marketing?
Well, it's interesting. Yeah, professional services marketing is different from other types of marketing in general in terms of product marketing, professional services. You're not selling a product, you're selling a service, right? Business valuation, even within that umbrella of professional services, is in fact different. So it's been interesting since I joined Empire in 2019, navigating that marketing approach, because my background historically has been working with accounting firms and other, professional service providers that are segmented. So what you have is a marketing strategy that's perhaps pointed toward whatever segment you're working in. For example, an accounting firm, if you work in the real estate practice, let's say, you're marketing to certain individuals within that space, right? Real estate, owners and so on and so forth. So with Empire, we can value any service, any company. It's really very broad. So the approach that we take to market towards our trust and estate practice, for example, would be very different than a different service line, because in trust and estates, when you're doing estate planning, right, you don't necessarily, as the individual, go and contact the valuation provider. You work with your attorney, who then would perhaps bring in the valuation provider to do that service. So with that, our area in terms of where referrals come from is trust and estate attorneys, right? That's very different from perhaps hedge funds or private equity, where we're marketing to private equity firms. So we have a very broad base that we market to. So my challenge there is to make sure that our messaging is appropriate for our target audience within all of those areas. It's not just one area that your concentration is. So that's the difference in my area of professional services marketing versus others.
There have been other guests on this show in the professional services industry who had a similar marketing mix. Most of the budget was events and seminars and networking and things like that. And, obviously COVID flipped that upside down. I'm curious, after, let's say we do go back to this normal people are talking about, and we are back to networking and in-person events and on a regular basis like it used to be. Would you still have your marketing mix, budgets allocated that way? Or would you introduce more of the digital?
Yeah, it's funny. Something that we've been talking about internally at Empire is exactly that. We've really taken a step back to look at the associations we're working with, the events that we're a part of, and what piece of our budget we're allocating to each. And really, what is the benefit? What are we getting out of these events? Of course, branding is always a great opportunity in any situation or as part of any event. As a result of COVID, a couple of the associations that we work with, where we have really high budget line items for those particular events, we actually took a step back. We still wanted to support the organization and association, but just at a lower level, because obviously we weren't able to get that in-person interaction that we find so valuable at Empire as part of a sponsorship for an event. We're going to continue to do that. We're going to continue to reallocate budget, because we understand and know that the online virtual platform is here to stay in some capacity, no matter what, that we now need to reassess budget. And does that mean perhaps not working with an event or an association that, maybe we've just been doing it because we've been doing it? And that's part of the communication that we're having with our managing directors and managers, to say, hey, listen, let's really understand what the value is that we're getting out of this event. And if it's not there like it used to be, perhaps we reallocate that budget towards either a virtual initiative or another event altogether. So that has been a good opportunity. I think something that has come out of COVID is getting our managing directors and other folks that are out there traveling and going to events to understand that maybe it's time to take a new look and have a fresh start.
So when you go back to in-person and running events, are you going to be recording these and using this as digital content later on?
Yes, absolutely, 100%. When we take part in an event, we have a lot of experts on our team that are asked to speak often on different types of subject matter. So, for example, we recently had 3 people speaking at the annual National ESOP Association conference down in Washington, D.C., which happened to be one of the first in-person events that we had attended since COVID. So that was really exciting. And what I do is I always connect with the folks that are running the events at the particular association to see if they're willing to share with us that collateral, right? People are speaking, they're subject matter experts. We want to utilize that as much as we can on our platforms, whether it be for social media or our website. So for sure, anytime I can record a webinar or an event or a speaking engagement, we do. And if we can also work with the associations to gain that messaging and that collateral, we do, and we use it. I think it's invaluable.
Yeah, there's a lot of marketing leaders that are just looking for opportunities for content. And I think this is one opportunity that you can't miss. You got to find a way to get some content away from it, and then you can publicize that later on. You went to an in-person event, and I am curious, what was that like?
It was interesting. I personally didn't go, but I did debrief with the folks that went afterwards to see exactly that. How was it? Is it the same? Is it different? What did you feel was the same or different? Actually, this particular event was really well attended. They had 600 attendees. It was a hybrid event. They had 600 attendees and 400 were attending in person. So I thought that was a phenomenal turnout as far as in-person versus hybrid. The difference was typically at these large conferences, you'll have sort of sidebar events where other sponsors might be hosting a separate sponsored event. There wasn't a lot of that this time. It was more one-on-one interaction. So you were taking the opportunity to connect with people and to perhaps go out to dinner or have a drink or coffee. So there were no sidebar events. I would say that was number one. And number two, typically at these conferences, you'll find there's a lot of networking that happens after dinner time. So after perhaps an evening event, after people return from dinner, perhaps they're networking at the local bar, within the hotel. There wasn't a lot of that. I heard that people retreated really back to their rooms early. I thought that was interesting because historically, I know my experience has been people usually stay out very late to network and whatnot. And that wasn't there at this event in particular. So I'll be curious to see how that also plays out going forward. Maybe people being online now all the time are going to say, hey, you know what? I can go back to my room for an hour and get an hour of work done before I go to bed. So we'll see. I don't know. That's going to be another interesting component, I think, going forward.
That is very interesting because that's the key thing that I've been hearing is what's missing from these Zoom or these virtual meetings is the before the event networking. It's, going to get something to eat and you're online and you're just talking to somebody, or you're in the hallway. Hey, where's the breakout room number 61? And, it's those conversations. And then afterwards, those conversations were missing from almost all virtual events.
Yeah, Jerry, I agree with you completely. I think that, like I said, this was the first event for us, or perhaps it was the first event for a lot of people. And they're just, testing the waters again, getting back out there. And there was definitely networking. It just wasn't as robust, I think, as it had been prior. So I know that's something that we thought was very valuable at events that we attended in the past. That interaction, that networking. It was there. It was just more of a one-on-one situation rather than larger gatherings and larger meetings. So that I thought was interesting.
A lot of marketing leaders listen to this show to get advice from their peers. What's your best advice for other marketing leaders?
I would say I have two. It may sound simple given our profession, but over communicate with your team. Never assume that they understand completely what the goal is. Have a discussion, have a regular discussion until everyone is absolutely clear as to what the overall objective is. And check in regularly with your team. I think it's really important to have regular meetings and with that meeting minutes. I'm really fastidious about taking notes and keeping everything in writing. Sometimes, you think you're going to remember something, but then you get distracted or something comes up. And also, making sure that everyone on the other end is clear. So maybe there's confusion as to what was discussed. You have something in writing to refer back to. Also, I would say, that goes for your superiors as well. If you're meeting with your superiors, keep detailed meeting minutes. I have a template that I use for my marketing committee meetings, which is clearly outlining what our goals are, what our completed projects have been, what our action steps are going forward. So I think it's really important to include that in every meeting that you have. And, I'll dovetail that with, in terms of your superiors and communicating with them, my number two piece of advice is always advocate for yourself because nobody else is going to advocate for you. You really have to know what the value of your work is and don't be afraid to discuss it and ask for a seat at that decision-making table. You want to be sure that as a marketing professional, your marketing efforts and you are on the same page with the people who are running your firm and that you're tying into the overall strategic plan of your firm. That's critical. And if you've been asking for a seat at the table and haven't received one, I would suggest, maybe perhaps making a move because that is so important to what we're doing as marketing professionals and what our overall objectives are, both for the firm and as far as personal growth going forward.
You mentioned meeting notes, and I'm a huge fan of meeting agendas, meeting notes. I've found that having a very organized approach to meetings like you have, this is the way to shorten meetings and make meetings more efficient and make sure, and even when somebody misses the meeting, well, here's a whole recap and here's what you need to do. We volunteered you for this task and here it is.
Right? So. Look for your initials here. No, that's a great point too. You might be organized in your own meetings, but also ask for agenda for other meetings that you're invited to. And like I said, the decision-making table, that's a big part in advocating for yourself. I feel that if you're not at the decision-making table with those people in your firm and you're not clearly defined in terms of your role in marketing and how it folds up into the overall strategic plan of the firm, that could be an issue. So I would make sure that you have that discussion, you present the reasoning behind why you'd like to have a seat at that decision-making table. And if you've shown that from time and time again, and it's not happening, then maybe it's time to make a move.
So you have this meeting template, and we certainly put a link in the show notes. But is it possible to share it with us here so we could take a look at it? You kind of walk us through it?
Sure, absolutely. I'll do that right now. Okay, so this is a typical meeting minutes that I would use for my marketing committee meetings. It essentially highlights the topics that we discussed, and I just have some broad topics here. Then we have what our action items were from our previous meeting that might still be open. So ahead of time in my agendas, I always put down what the action items were from the previous meeting and where we stand. Is it still open? Has it been completed? So everyone is aware and on the same page. I also keep a section here for what our completed marketing projects have been. Now, this really comes in handy for me personally, both from a communication standpoint with my superiors and my team members, but also for myself. When I'm gearing up for review time, this is where I go. I take a look at all of my meeting minutes and I say, okay, what are the completed marketing projects that I've done through the whole year? You might think, oh, I'll remember that. Oh, that was such a huge initiative. I'll remember that. But I can't tell you how many times I've referred back to my agendas and my meeting minutes and said, oh, that's right. We did that direct mail campaign. I actually forgot about that. Or we did this. Or, oh, yeah, this took so much time. And so that's really beneficial for me, for both of those reasons, to communicate with my team, but for also myself personally.
Never let people forget the great things you do.
Yeah, and your superiors, it's on you to let them know what you've done. It's not on them to remember what you did. So no matter how hard you try or even how hard you communicate during the year or how many, atta girls you got during the year, that doesn't mean come review time, they're going to remember. So it's on you to make sure that you're prepared and that they remember. And then, of course, last but not least, your action items from this meeting. What are the goals after this? Hold people accountable, stick to the timelines, follow up with them ahead of due dates, remind them marketing for a lot of the professionals we work with is not high on the radar, especially during busy seasons. And we know that busy seasons have since elongated. I think it's important to follow up with people in a timely manner, discuss realistic deadlines, and here you have it in writing.
Yeah, I think action items is probably one of the most important things about this document, because just because the meeting's over doesn't mean it's over. It's just beginning, right? The meeting creates action items. And then after the meeting, we have to make sure that these things actually get done and get done right. So I love your template. I'm going to include it in the show notes. I think people are going to get a lot out of this.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, happy to share it and happy to answer any questions, anybody might have. Feel free to email me. It's been great talking to you today, Jerry. I appreciate you having me.
It's been great having you on the show, Virginia. Really appreciate you sharing your insights and your marketing meeting templates with other marketing leaders. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much for checking out Navigating the Noise podcast. Subscribe today by clicking the subscribe button or visit navigatingthenoise.com to subscribe via email. On our website, you can access the show notes, resources, and links from today's episode to help you take action on what was discussed. Also, you can ask Jerry questions that he may reply to on the show. Plus, if you're a leader in your marketing department and would like to be a guest, you can contact us through the site. It's really easy. Just visit navigatingthenoise.com to subscribe, watch episodes, ask Jerry anything, or to be a guest. Until next time, stay safe, navigate wisely.